Hi, I'm Owen from Bitesize Irish Gaelic, and welcome to episode number 10 of the Bitesize Irish Gaelic podcast. Even if you're alone learning to speak Irish outside of Ireland, don't despair. Rest assured that there are thousands like you across the globe, all interested in tapping into Ireland's native culture. And for all about this podcast, go to bitesizeirishgaelic.com/podcast. And today I'll be joined by a very special guest, Liam Hughes. And just before that, there was a very nice message left on the comment section of podcast number 8. So I'll read it out. I just listened to podcast 8, the first one I had listened to. I enjoyed hearing the origin of your website. Look forward to hearing the other ones you make. Thank you, Slán Stephen Lund. So Stephen, thanks a lot. And that's where Mary Murphy interviewed me. She took the interview seat. It was a great interview. It was good fun. So if you haven't heard it, do listen back. And thanks to Anne Cartmel and Robert Ahern, who also left very nice comments on that blog episode. Right, Liam, how are you doing?
I'm not so bad, Owen. How are you keeping?
Sure, I'm very good. So I'm joined by Liam Hughes. I'll say American artist and designer, and we've met up at least a couple of times in and around Limerick City, and it was a pleasure to meet Liam. So Liam, first question for you though, like, are you American? Are you Irish? Are you Irish American?
Well, I'd consider myself Irish American. And I have been coming to Ireland since I was young.
Okay.
And grandparents came from out in Tipperary way, great grandparents, and just been connected with the family for years. And I purchased property. Now I'm thinking, geez, God, I'd say about now 30, at least about 30 years ago.
Oh Jesus, that's a long time ago, Liam.
It was. So it's really hard. I kind of have the best of both worlds. I feel like half the year I'm Irish and half the year I'm Irish American. So.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, and so just to give us a little background, like what keeps you busy all year? What are you up to?
Well, what I'm up to, I always say I kind of split my time between America and Ireland. I'm an artist, designer, singer, etc. And basically, I work a lot of art shows, in particular, from September into December this time of year, and then I take a short break, and then in the springtime, say from March, April, I also do art shows. Then sometimes I go out west in America to California and Arizona and do art shows out there because, of course, it's a beautiful time to be out there when the weather isn't so nice here in the Midwest. And then in May I leave for Ireland, and I go over and I actually tour people around Ireland for about 3 months into August anyway. And then I often go to Ireland. Now, like this year, I'll be going to Ireland for the month of January too. So it's very much a back and forth kind of lifestyle.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, I like the idea of a bit of flexibility, of a bit of variation of where you spend your time. Just thinking back to one of our podcasts that I did with Felicity, so you can, if somebody's listening, they can go back and find that podcast. But she spends her time between the Dingle Peninsula and London City, so it's a very interesting contrast. And she was telling us about how life is on the Dingle Peninsula, sticking out into the Atlantic Ocean in midwinter. So that was really a treat. So, Liam, what do you do at the art shows?
What I do is I produce jewelry from shards or little bits of pieces of damaged china, like dinner plates or teacups, saucers. Something that was something basically that would have been thrown into the garbage. I take those pieces, and I turn them into pendants that women would wear, or men, and pin pendants that would be like a brooch or a necklace. There's a finding on the back that is reversible. It can be used either way, kind of thing. And I was a history major in university and an art major, and so I also love to research the piece and kind of find out about where the china came from or the production methods, because I found that the story of the piece of china is sometimes, well, it often sells the piece of china, and it also makes that piece more interesting.
Mm.
Like, I mean, just quickly for an example, when Katharine Hepburn, the famous movie actress, when she passed
Mm-hmm.
away, I happened to purchase a damaged piece of china from Sotheby's at the auction, and
Wow.
I turned that
Mm-hmm.
into jewelry, and I had a Katharine Hepburn show, and of course the story behind it was fantastic. You know what I mean? And it was
Mm.
authenticated with the picture and the auction catalog and things like that. So, yeah, so there's more to it than just taking a broken dish. I try and find out a little bit more about the piece. Now, granted, some pieces are they're just contemporary and not that interesting, but some of them can be really fascinating. The time of where in history they were made and how they were made, stuff like that.
Oh, and like, how do you? So you must have been good at making stuff with your hands, but how did you get into this line of
Well,
work?
that's kind of interesting because in art school, I mean, I went to art school in California, and that's where I studied and trained. And I trained as in oil painting. I mean, that's my concentration as an oil painter, and I did that for quite a few years. How I got into the jewelry end of it, I happened to be out in Boston, and I saw a woman who was making like we'd call them a trivet or like a hot plate, something to put a hot teapot on, or
Okay.
so it didn't burn the table. But she was putting china in wood, setting it in wood in a wood frame. And as an artist, as artists, we're always looking, and our minds are always, analyzing and interested in stuff, and I wasn't so
Mm.
crazy about her making these hot plates or these trivets, but I was intrigued by the use of china, her using china. And so I actually came back to the Midwest area, and I started researching it. And this is about 16 years ago. And I found out that anytime an artist uses dishes, broken dishes, to create their art, whether sometimes people will make a tabletop with broken dishes or cover a picture frame with broken dishes or make jewelry, you're
Right.
doing the folk art of picassiette. Now, I forgive my French pronunciation, but basically, assiette is like a place setting or plate, and pique is small bit
Right.
or take from, and so it just intrigued me then to find out that although it has a French name, its origins actually are very ancient, and they go back to Africa. And that to me I was fascinated by it because I actually had studied African art quite a bit in school, where a water
Mm.
vessel or grain vessel would have been smashed when somebody died. They would have laid those pieces on the grave because the designs were very
Mm.
distinct to the individual families. Basically, then people knew who was buried in the grave.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Yeah. And do you pull in your kind of Irish side of it into the jewelry at
I
all?
do often. I do. I love working with Balik. I mean, Balik as you
Mm.
can imagine, it's a huge seller in America. The Irish
Mm.
Americans love the Balik. And I also find a lot of my china in Ireland. I mean, I found a beautiful amount of it once. I was in the village of Cong, and up in Mayo, and I found I was down in the river, and the river was kind of low. The estuary or whatever. The river was kind of low. I found all sorts of bits of pieces of china.
Right. How come it just been thrown out,
I
or?
think, yeah, well, years ago, I mean, even like in Ireland, my family, on the family farm, Michal and May, there was always that dump site, because you didn't have door-to-door rubbish pickup, and so there was always that place
Mm.
down by the sheds, down by the dairy, that was just stuff was just dumped, and you'd just be amazed. I mean, if you broke a cup, it was thrown there. Now these, like the family's been in the home for 300 years, so you can imagine their rubbish pit is quite quite
Yeah.
large.
Yeah. Interesting. So Liam, like, bring us back. Like, where in the US did you
I was
grow
born
up?
and raised in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. So I was surrounded on three sides by the Great Lakes, very close to Lake Superior. I'm a short distance from Lake Superior, and also then very close to the Canadian border. I wouldn't be too far from the Canadian border. I know in my travels around the United States, when I went to school in California, people often mistook me for Canadian just because of the accent was just a border
Uh,
accent, we'd call
And
it.
when you were growing up, like, you obviously had a pretty strong connection with Ireland, but like, did you grow up as what you might call an Irish American, or what was it like in the
It
household?
was, well, my father, yeah, my father was very, very strong. Again, I think we go back. I always tell people, the Irish has such a strong oral tradition. Much more than some other
Mm,
cultures. I mean, I have friends who maybe have, a Polish background or a German background, and they don't really know much about back home. The old place. And
mm,
but because I think of the oral tradition, my family, we talked, it was talked about, and it was just a normal thing. It wasn't, I mean, we were American, we were Irish American, but St. Patrick's Day for us was just like, I mean, it was definitely, you'd go to mass. I mean, that was no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You know what I mean? But there was also a great celebration. I mean, I have great memories of growing up, and St. Patrick's Day was just like, I would say it would be like the equivalent of, like, Easter or Christmas. There was great, there was always a huge meal. You know, my father would have his friends over, and of course, he grew up in an area in my hometown that was known as Strawberry Hill, and Strawberry Hill was basic all of the Irish that had immigrated. I mean, when I look at the names, all the little old ladies that I used to have to shovel out, or the bachelors, because in this country there were a lot of Irish bachelors and also a lot of Irish spinsters too. But
oh,
because they were there taking care of the family. But I mean, the McCarthys and the Maloney's and the McMahons and the O'Donohues, they were all on this hill, and it was just kind of where they were. Now, we grew up in a town that was segregated. The Italian
mm,
population, they were always on the other side of town. And it was funny. You'd meet at church. A lot of the
okay.
Italians are Catholic, the Irish Catholic, but then you went back to your neighborhoods. So it's just kind of funny. But no, we just knew a lot about it. St. Patrick's Day, my father would always dressed up, and
Yeah.
we'd go to school, and we'd have to have something Irish on it. Usually he'd pin shamrocks to us, a shamrock plant, which is different than the shamrocks in Ireland. They were usually much bigger leaved than the Irish one. So we'd go with this big chunk of foliage on our, our lapel, which you can imagine the other kids didn't. They found it quite funny, I should say, but we wore it proudly anyway.
Yeah, cool. And by the way, when you say oral tradition, you mean like we talk a lot, right?
Yeah, you talk a lot, but it's a great. When I say the oral tradition, there was the stories. I mean, yourself. Like when I go home, and I can't wait in January when I come back, and we'll be sitting there with your relations, and all of a sudden somebody will say something, and all of a sudden this great story start, this great conversation, and it's
Mm,
something that I absolutely look forward to so much. In America, everything is moving very fast all the time. And in Ireland, it does too now
mm,
in many respects. You know that yourself. Everything is much faster.
yeah.
It's get this, get done, move here. Now, where I have my home, it's up in the Silvermine Mountains. So it is a much more relaxed atmosphere. We're not in I'm 20 minutes from the main village or the main town of Nina. So it's still very rural, and it's still, I love being able to walk down the street and you knock on anybody's door. It just, just some you just push open and you just walk in, and there's nothing like the conversation sitting there. I absolutely love it. There's something about the Irish conversation, and yourself, it just leads to, it's constant crack.
Yeah.
I mean, oh,
But
could I live
but
with
Liam,
crack?
is it cynical crack? Is it sarcastic or just good fun? Or how do you find it?
It's funny. I find it. I don't find it cynical at all. I don't. I find it like, I enjoy so much sitting down with a relation of mine, Mihal, a cousin of mine, Mihal. He and I absolutely love to do the banter back and forth. You know what I mean? Like, I'll say, I phoned him the other day and I said, no, Mihal, I'll be coming over on the 9th of January. He says, you don't have to. It's no bother. You don't have to. I said, no, I don't mind. He says, no, really, it's okay if you don't come. And I said, look, I'm not going to disappoint you. I said, I'm not, I wouldn't do that to you. That kind of stuff. You know what I mean? The back and forth.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, he would, I assume he'd be disappointed if I didn't go. But I don't find it cynical. I find it great fun. But I will say, now, I did have some guests once, and I have to say, this was not too long, a couple of years ago. I had some guests, and one of the neighbors knocked on the door, and one of his young daughters, asked if was there any copper for the baby. You know what I mean? Now, she knew, and I, of course, knew her. And so I went to the guests were there, and this is a husband and wife and a friend. And I said, oh, this young girl here, I said, she was looking if there was any money, any coins, any copper for the baby. And the wife, she picked up on it right away. She right away, she enjoyed it. She went and got some coins. And he got very concerned that this poor little girl, you know, didn't have, and he was quite caught up in it. And I was smiling the whole time. I mean, I knew what was going on. But then after she left, and he'd given her a couple points, and he was he didn't get it. You know what I mean? He was very confused by it. And I had to explain it to him. And even then, the next day, he said, well, I could, you know, for him, that experience wasn't fun, you know?
But so do explain it to us. Like, what would your interpretation be? As far as how the girl was asking for the coppers for the baba.
It was totally tongue in cheek. I mean, she was, you know, she was playing the part really well. You know what I mean? She was playing the part really. She was about 12 years old at the time, I think. She was.
Oh,
she was playing it. I mean, she no more was old enough to have a baby. But she was playing it very well, and of course I was just, you know, because I just jumped right into it right away and was enjoying it. And I said, oh, this poor girl, and she wondered if we had any, you know, copper, you know, anything like that. And, you know, who says copper? I mean, I would never even say that, you know.
Yeah.
And you know, and
so
go ahead.
Like, Liam, so you mentioned, like, you referred to it as home, like back. So did you grow up when you were young? Were you able to travel back to Ireland?
I didn't too much when I was really young. It wasn't until I was a little bit older when I traveled back. And I think I refer to home. It's a very endearing thing to me when I say that. And I'll tell you, it's one of the nicest compliments, and it's said all the time, you know, to Irish Americans and to just people in general, you know, Irish returning, you know, how long you home for. And I sometimes think the Irish don't realize how meaningful that is to an Irish American, somebody who has that feeling, that longing. And I'm not talking that whole, you know, I'm not talking the whole plastic patty thing, the leprechauns and the pots. That's I'm not talking that, you know what I mean? That's a whole other segment of society, which I don't even get. I never understood that, you know, because that wasn't where I was coming from at all. But it's such a compliment to say that, because we in this country, in America, the country's so young. And it's very hard sometimes for us. We're, you know, the Irish, I know at times they would, you know, they snicker at the fact of, you know, oh, the Irish Americans and all this, you know, shamrocks and flag waving and everything. But I sometimes think, I wish they'd understand that we don't have, we don't have that connection. So to us, that's really important to differentiate, you know the word, differentiate. I was speaking Irish, wasn't I? Was that Irish?
Differentiate, yeah.
Tell everybody that anyway. And you know,
you are, yeah, definitely.
Between you know, the say the Italians or the Irish or the, you know what I mean? Where in Ireland everybody was Irish at one time. You know what I mean? It was all Irish. So that pride in where you're coming from, yeah, when somebody says, you know, how long you home for, you know that, like, when my relations left Ireland, they left because things weren't good. That's why they left. You know, they didn't leave because, gee, we're doing great here, and, you know, times were tough, you know, whether it was the famine or whether it was, you know, just 30s or 40s, you know what I mean, when people start leaving because, you know, the economy is bad wherever. So it's a huge compliment. And I often now say to people at the shows, when they find out, you know, that I've got an Irish background and I've got a home in Ireland and things like that, and I'll say, have you been home yet? You know, have you been there? They say, oh, no, I haven't. And you can just see how good they feel about that. You know what I mean? They really do feel nice and good about it. So I just take it as a huge compliment. I always appreciate it when people say that. Now, my cousin, when he says it, I think he's just trying to figure out when I'm heading back. That's what
that's good. I like it. You have this, so there's a family farm that you said has been there for, say, 300 years. Is that what you bought, or is there a separate property?
No, there's separate property. What I actually bought was, I mean, the family farm. Michal and Anime live in the family farm, and I don't know, 30 some years ago now, 30 years ago, 31 years ago, I was over there with my parents and my brother, and we were, you know, seeing everybody and visiting and stuff. And I just asked my cousin Michal, I said, is there any place for sale? Local. You know how I was totally just, you know, just excited and just wanted to know, you know, just kind of. And he said, geez, he says, the Burke's place is for sale. But he said, nobody's looked at it. It's been closed. They died several years ago and it's been closed up. And geez, we're so far high up in the, you know, we're up in the mountains, you know, nobody would be interested in this place. You know what I mean? And so I think in my youth, I was just excited. I said, well, I'm just going to call the auctioneer and just see what just see it, because I wanted to go into it anyway. At that time, anything, if there was an empty old cottage or something, I was crawling around in it. And so I met the auctioneer and I went through the place and I put a bid on it.
Yeah.
And the bid, I didn't know it was actually owned by the council at the time. I didn't realize it was a council cottage, and I didn't know that they'd kind of accepted the bid, but then an English couple got involved in the bidding, and so then we had some bidding that went back and forth a bit. And I finally, what happened is, I didn't realize that the auctioneer in Ireland at that time, the auctioneer kind of works for himself. You know what I mean? He's trying to, get the price up because he's going to get a better commission. And in this country, if you hired a real estate agent / auctioneer, if you hire them, they're working for you.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. But so this English couple got involved in the bidding, and the bid went back and forth and back and forth, and finally some relations called me. Some other relations rang me, and they said that what I should do is I should basically put in a bid and then say, that's it now, I'm done. That's as high as I'll go, and then wait a couple of weeks. If you're taking a risk, and then ring back the auctioneer again and put another bid down. And I said, well, you can't do that. And he said, oh, in Ireland you can. You know what I mean? The bid's not done until the deposit's paid. So that's exactly what I did. I put it in, and the auctioneer said, oh, great, Liam, sorry, whatever. He called me back, or rang me back, that the couple from England, they put down another 200 punts at the time, and it was theirs. And so then when I rang him back 2 weeks later and told him that I was putting another 300 punts down on it, you can imagine he was not happy. Because he then had to call this English couple who had not put a deposit down yet, that somebody got, that the bid went up again after he had already told them they had it. So basically at that point they pushed out of it, and I got the cottage. It's really been a thrill. It's been a lot of work and a lot of money, but it's been a thrill. I couldn't ask for more. And that's why when I say go home, it really is going home now in so many more ways than just, the Irish connection. It is my home over there,
And tell us a bit about the Silvermines. That I guess you could say it's a range. It's not is it a mountain range or more of a hill range?
No, it's kind of a hill range. Like if I go into Nina, I tell people I'm up in Ballycare and Knockahopple, they right away they say, oh, you're one of the mountain men, the mountain men. So I'm referred to as one of the mountain men, and it always seems funny to me because I don't see them as mountains. I mean, you do when you leave Nina, it's all uphill when you get to the place. But I wouldn't call it a mountain. I would call it a lot of big hills.
Yeah.
I definitely, but that's all right. And it's called the Silvermine Mountains. So yeah, it's not like a mountain like the Rocky Mountains or the Swiss Alps or anything like that. But
and there are mines there, aren't there? Do you know any background to it?
The little bit I know about it is that there were silver mines that go as far back. I mean, I shouldn't say. I think they just go as far back as the Middle Ages. And what I do know is actually one of the first mints in Ireland was actually in Limerick, and the silver came out of the mines there, and it was then struck. The mint was they struck the coins in Limerick, and I learned that at King John's Castle once, touring the castle. But then in the mines, I think were on and off over the couple of centuries, and then I don't know if it was in the 40s or 50s, a Canadian company purchased the mines, and they started to mine lead out of the silver mines, and then that closed. I think it was in the 80s, because I know a couple of people. One of my neighbors, Jimmy Clifford, worked in the mines years, up until the 70s, I think, in the lead mine. So yeah, that's pretty much I know. But there's a great mining tradition. The town is really nice, and the people there are very proud of that mining tradition. And you can really, I have a friend in town there, Eamon Dooley. He's a good friend of mine, and he took me around some of the mine sites one time, and I was fascinated by some of the stuff that's still left there. And if you just have to get off that main road and go in there, and some of the old buildings and the old shafts and everything are still there. So it's quite interesting.
Really, yeah. So just to put it on the map, I'm in Limerick, and the Silvermines is not too far away from the city.
No.
I guess back in the day it might have been a bit of a trek.
I think 30 years ago it was a bit of a trek. It's not so much a trek anymore.
I love walking up Keeper Hill. So when you go up Keeper
Oh,
Hill, it looks down, back down into Limerick City, and it looks down and
yes,
you can see Neenah town. And it's just
yeah.
beautiful part of the world, I have to
It
say.
is. It is. It really is. Keeper Hill is just. It's such a gem to me. You know, I, I, I can. As I'm driving up to my cottage, there's of course this hill right in front. But for the most of the drive to the cottage, I get a beautiful view of Keeper. You know, and I always remember years ago my cousin saying to me, "Keeper's got his cap on today. Keeper's got his cap on." And I could never. You know, he said basically
Uh,
the clouds were down low enough. You know, but Keeper Hill is such. I'm all around that area all the time because I've got relations in Tour again, which is even closer to Limerick, just outside of Newport and Thor,
mm,
and the Kennedys, Mary and Tim Kennedy, and I go there all the time. And of course, you have to basically go around Keeper to get to that other side, pretty much, you know. And,
mm-hmm.
now it's a real. I mean, everybody on the mountain, we all just Keeper is very important to all of us. It's got a great feeling to us. You know, we really feel like we're much closer. Than say people in Neenah or anything like that, you know, that it's kind of part of our landscape.
Yeah, I will put it in the show notes. A couple of photos. There was I'm part of a group called Gael Limni, and we just get together every once in a while in a Limerick pub and speak a little
Yeah.
Irish. And we arranged to do a walk up Keeper Hill, and I'd say it was like a January,
Mm,
so it was kind of bad weather. So it was all overcast, really cold
mm.
weather, and it just happened to snow that morning, so there was like snow
Oh,
everywhere and it was completely overcast,
yeah.
right? So we do the trek up Keeper Hill in any
Uh,
case, and I got up above the clouds, and it was
oh,
sunshine up there with snow, and it was
beautiful.
just
Just
fabulous. You just looked out all
brilliant.
across towards the Limerick Shannon
Oh,
estuary, and yeah, it really was beautiful. So
uh,
I'll put up a photo with us drinking a cup of tea
cup of tea.
up there.
Perfect. Perfect. Have you ever been to Spout? Did you ever go to Spout?
No? Where's
Spout's
this?
it's
So,
on Keeper, and you climb up. It's which side is it? I'm trying to think.
oh,
I came up through oh geez, I think it's up through Tour. I think I went up through, and you go up, and
okay.
it's a waterfall that shoots off, and they call it Spout because it's not a huge waterfall, but it just kind of shoots right off the top of the off of Keeper. And what's really interesting is you can crawl up through the.
Oh,
Oh, I mean, it's really kind of a climb as far as just you're just hanging on to the you know the scraw and stuff. You know what I mean, the heather and stuff. But you can get up to it, and
oh,
you can actually go underneath the waterfall,
wow.
and
Mm.
it's just I mean it's absolutely beautiful. And I often said sometime before I die, which you know hopefully in the far future, but I'm getting older, I keep thinking I want to climb up there. I would love, there's actually enough space that you could actually stay over, you know, stay overnight.
Wow.
It would be an unbelievable thing to wake up there, you know, like at 5 o'clock in the morning in the summer, you know, when the sun is
Wouldn't
shining,
it?
and see this water shooting out right in front of you, going down into the valley. So if you do it
And
again,
you'd wake up and go, ah, damn rain again.
with my luck, I'd roll off into Spout and I'd be showered all the way down to the bottom of the hill. So you
uh,
have to go there sometime. Make a point to ask somebody about Spout. How do you get to Spout?
Excellent. Definitely will. Liam, while we're talking about places to go, so you, one of your the things you pass your time during the year is bringing people on tour,
I do.
a bit of a private tour, right, around Ireland. So is there anywhere apart from Tipperary where I guess your heart lies, that when you get back there, you feel a little bit at home again around Ireland?
Yeah, you know, boy, I travel so much around, especially into like Waterford, Cork, you know, the Killarney, Dingle. I mean, I'm doing that quite a bit. I've often said to myself, if I didn't have my place in Tipperary, if that wasn't my, you know, home base,
Right.
you know, largely originally because of family, but now because of my home, and just because I just love Tipperary. Is kind of a hidden county. I think a lot of people don't think of it as the place to go, and it's so gorgeous and there's so much going on. But if it wasn't Tip,
Mm,
I would head to Connemara. I love Connemara. I don't
mm.
know. There's something just about that oh, I don't know. I think there's a sense for me, for some reason, I get this sense of isolation in Connemara, which I really like. And I could have a lot of people around, but there's just something about that landscape that to me, I find absolutely fascinating.
Oh yeah, like even just driving west out of Galway
Mm,
City, and you there's like a slow kind of road, there's a low speed limit, and you kind of start hitting on
yeah,
Spiddle town,
right.
and it there's like there are houses around, and it's nicely populated, but there's definitely this special atmosphere
Yeah, isn't
there
there? Yeah.
that I can't explain it
Mm,
really, but you know you're in Connemara
exactly.
then.
Exactly. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
no other place. It's like, and the thing about Ireland that is so wonderful, and I love it, and I tell my visitors, you can go 10 minutes down the road and you have a new landscape. Do you know, I mean, it's amazing for a small
Mm,
country to have such diversity in its landscape. You know, like, and I often think when you go now, of course, I take people all the time to the Cliffs of Moher, you know, and because they love it and they have to see it. And I think it is a must
mm,
see. But you leave the cliffs and within 10 minutes you're in the burn, and it is this incredibly barren landscape. Now, the thing that makes me,
mm,
I always get the biggest charge of it, and it kind of makes me crazy, is the bus tours. They pull up, they stop at this one spot, and they all unload the people, and they stand, like they go within 4 feet into the burn, and they take photographs, and then they're done. And you don't really experience that unless you walk into it. Do you know what I mean? You need to. I take the car and I use a car park that's farther down, and I always get out with my people and I walk to the ocean.
mm,
You know, that's something that I think Irish Americans are missing out a lot of times. They get in there, they get in the car. In fact, Corey and I have a term for it. We call
uh,
it the green blur tour. You know, because it's true. And you know the ones I'm talking about. They just it's nonstop. They just stop at the next for their B&B that night, and they're
that's
snapping
good.
pictures out of the car windows, and you're going, oh come on, you have to stop. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
for example, when I walk from my cottage to the cousins, and it's like a quarter of a mile. Now I'm in the car constantly driving back and forth, you know, 2-3 times a day for whatever reason, to my cousin Mihal's chagrin, I'm sure, but I'm back and forth.
Right.
But some many times I'll say, no, don't take the car. There's no need for
Yeah.
you to walk down the road. I've been down this road hundreds of times. And every time I walk down it, you know, there's certain areas that there's just before I reach the family farm, the trees are kind of overhanging the road, you know what I mean? And it's very mossy and everything. And that's one thing I wish that tourists coming to Ireland would remember. You know, it's not all about Dublin. I mean, Dublin is great, but and you do need a car to get from point A to point B, but take those 1 or 2 days and get out of the car and just walk the roads. I mean, I think if a tourist started on the end of my road and just walked all the way from from Ballycare and Knockahopple, Foyleduff, all the way down to the end of that road, there is no way they wouldn't have a fantastic conversation with someone on that road, or to be invited in. Do you know what I mean? Oh my God, I just think about it. You know what I mean? They would have a blast. They would have such a good time, you know? But they're always in the car getting to the point A, point A, point A, point
Really,
B, point,
yeah,
you know what I mean?
yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really nice tip. Well, not just a tip, it's good advice. To we should finish up on a positive note like that. That's very nice. So Liam, I hope to see you soon, you and Corey. Sometime soon again in Ireland.
I hope so. In fact, we're
Um,
coming over in January, so we're going to try. Hopefully, we can get together maybe at Finnegan's again for a pint.
mhm. Oh yeah, I won't be driving that time, so.
Well, perfect.
Uh, uh, and especially for your shard jewelry. So Liam, how can people find you
They can
online?
go to liamshardjewelry.com, LIAMSHARD.com. And then our travel blog and podcast is irishfireside.com. And that's the blog and podcast we do. So yeah,
Yeah,
those
lovely.
are the two websites, and I'm hoping to put together an Irish CD soon. So when that happens, an Irish, with tunes, we'll give you that website too.
Oh, excellent. Oh, looking
Well,
forward
I'm
to it.
working on an Irish song right now, so we'll see. In Irish, by the way, and I'm not. I would
Well,
love to learn how to speak Irish. That's on the list. It's on my bucket list. But right now, I'm learning a song, Amen a Crick, or Net of the Hill. So we'll see how that goes.
well, fair play to you. And Liam, thanks so much for the time you spent today. It was a real pleasure hearing your story. So, Liam, I'll let you know as we get comments on this episode. So, for those listening, I have to say thanks to Liam, and to leave a comment for this episode, you can join in on the conversation. You don't have to be just listening. So, come to the Bitesize Irish Gaelic podcast. So the URL is bitesizeirishgaelic.com/podcast, and just find episode 10. If you're loving the show, the best thing you can do is go to iTunes and leave us a 5-star written review. I think maybe in 2014 we might be accepting 4-star reviews, but right now, well, we're recording this anyway in 2013, and 5 stars only, at least until the second half of 2014. So you just log into the iTunes store, find the Bitesize Irish Gaelic podcast, and write a review. You can send me in a listener question directly if you have a question about the language or traveling to Ireland or anything in between. So the email address is podcast@bitesizeirishgaelic.com. Thanks to Tsukumo in Japan for their music, which you hear on this episode under a Creative Commons license. And until the next episode, Slán go fóill. Bye for now.